He laughed at her scars. Then the general's words left him speechless. Emotional tale. Sarah walked into the crowded coffee shop on Tuesday morning, her heart beating fast. She had been working up the courage to come here for weeks. This was where all the young professionals from the downtown office buildings came for their morning coffee. She pulled her long sleeves down over her wrists and found a small table in the corner. The scars on her arms and neck were from a house fire 3 years ago. Sarah had been trapped in her childhood bedroom when the old wiring sparked and set the curtains ablaze. Her father had rushed through the flames to save her, but not before the fire had left its permanent marks on her skin. The doctors said she was lucky to be alive, but Sarah didn't always feel lucky. At 26, Sarah worked as a librarian at the city library. She loved books and helping people find information, but she rarely socialized outside of work. The stares and whispered comments about her scars made her uncomfortable in social situations. Her therapist kept encouraging her to put herself out there and meet new people, which is why she finally decided to try this popular coffee shop. As she waited in line, Sarah noticed a man in an expensive suit ahead of her. He had perfectly styled blonde hair and was talking loudly on his phone about some business deal. His name tag read, Marcus Chen, Regional Sales Director. He seemed confident and successful, the kind of person who had never faced real hardship. When Sarah reached the counter, she ordered her usual vanilla latte. The barista, a young woman with kind eyes, smiled at her warmly. "I love your sweater," she said. "That blue color is beautiful on you." Sarah felt herself relax a little. "Thank you," she replied softly. As she turned to find her table, Sarah accidentally bumped into Marcus, who was adding sugar to his coffee. Some of his drink splashed onto his shirt. "Watch where you're going," Marcus snapped, looking down at the small coffee stain. Then his eyes moved to Sarah's face and neck, where some of her scars were visible above her collar. His expression changed from annoyance to something worse, disgust mixed with cruel amusement. "Oh, I see," Marcus said loudly, causing other customers to look over. "Maybe you should be more careful. Though I guess with scars like that, you're probably used to things going wrong in your life." Sarah felt her face burn with shame. The entire coffee shop seemed to go quiet. She could feel everyone staring at her. Marcus continued, apparently enjoying the attention. "I mean, what happened to you? Did you stick your face in a blender?" He laughed at his own joke, and a few other customers looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Sarah's hand shook as she tried to back away. "I'm sorry about your shirt," she whispered. "You should be more careful," Marcus said, still speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Some of us have important places to be and can't afford to look like we've been in an accident." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had worked so hard to build up the courage to come here, and now this man was making her feel like a monster in front of everyone. She grabbed her coffee and rushed toward the door, desperate to escape. But as she reached for the handle, the door opened and an older man walked in. He was probably in his 60s, with silver hair and a straight posture. He wore a simple dark suit, but there was something about the way he carried himself that commanded respect. Sarah noticed a small pin on his lapel that she didn't recognize. The man's eyes immediately took in the scene: Sarah's tears, Marcus's smug expression, and the uncomfortable silence of the other customers. His gaze lingered on Marcus for a moment, and Sarah saw his jaw tighten slightly. "Excuse me," the older man said to Sarah gently. "Are you all right?" Sarah nodded quickly, not trusting her voice. She just wanted to leave. The older man stepped aside to let her pass, but his eyes never left Marcus. "Perhaps we could have a word," he said to the younger man. Marcus looked annoyed at being interrupted. "Look, old man, I don't know who you think you are, but this doesn't concern you. I was just having a conversation with this lady about being more careful in public." The older man's expression remained calm, but Sarah noticed other customers beginning to pay closer attention. There was something about his presence that made people look twice. "My name is General William Morrison," the man said quietly, "and I believe this conversation does concern me." Marcus rolled his eyes. "General? What, like from the military? Well, congratulations on your service or whatever, but that doesn't give you the right to interfere with—" "The young lady who just left," General Morrison interrupted, his voice still calm but carrying a weight that made Marcus stop talking. "Do you know anything about her?" Marcus shrugged. "Just that she should be more careful and maybe consider staying home if she can't handle being in public with scars like that." A few customers gasped at Marcus's cruelty. The general's expression hardened. "I see," the general said. And you find it amusing to mock someone's appearance. Marcus was beginning to look less confident, but his arrogance kept him talking. Look, I'm not trying to be mean, but some people just aren't cut out for public spaces. If you can't handle how you look, maybe don't inflict it on the rest of us. General Morrison stepped closer to Marcus. Tell me, young man, what do you do for a living? I'm a regional sales director, Marcus said, puffing out his chest slightly. I manage a team of 20 people and bring in over $2 million in revenue annually. Impressive, the general said. And I assume you've worked very hard to achieve that success? Marcus nodded, not sure where this was going, but enjoying the opportunity to talk about himself. Absolutely. I've sacrificed a lot to get where I am. 80-hour weeks, constant travel, missing family events. Success doesn't come easy. No, it doesn't, the general agreed. And I imagine you're proud of what you've accomplished? Of course, Marcus said. The general looked around the coffee shop. Every customer was now listening intently to the conversation. Tell me, in all your hard work and sacrifice, have you ever risked your life for someone else? Marcus looked confused. What do you mean? Have you ever put yourself in physical danger to help another person? Have you ever faced a situation where you had to choose between your own safety and someone else's? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Well, no, but I don't see what that has to do with anything. General Morrison nodded slowly. I thought not. Would you like to know about the young lady you just mocked? Marcus shrugged, but Sarah could see he was becoming nervous. The general's quiet intensity was beginning to affect everyone in the coffee shop. Her name is Sarah Chen, the general began. 3 years ago, there was a house fire on Maple Street. The local fire department was delayed because of a major accident on the highway. When they finally arrived, the house was fully engulfed in flames. The coffee shop was completely silent now. Even the baristas had stopped working to listen. Sarah's elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was trapped on the second floor. The general continued. She was 92 years old and couldn't walk without assistance. The firefighters were still setting up their equipment when Sarah arrived on the scene. Marcus's face was beginning to lose its smugness. Sarah didn't wait for the professionals, General Morrison said, his voice carrying clearly through the quiet shop. She saw Mrs. Province, Patterson, at the upstairs window, screaming for help, and she went in after her. Several customers were now staring at Marcus with obvious disapproval. The staircase had already caught fire, the general continued. Sarah had to crawl through smoke and flames to reach Mrs. Patterson's room. She found the elderly woman unconscious from smoke inhalation. Marcus was no longer smiling. Sarah managed to get Mrs. Patterson to the window, where firefighters could reach them with a ladder, but the roof collapsed as she was climbing down. She shielded Mrs. Patterson's body with her own and took the full force of the burning debris. The general paused, looking directly at Marcus. Those scars you find so amusing? They're from saving a 92-year-old woman's life. Marcus's face had gone pale. Several customers were now openly glaring at him. But perhaps, General Morrison said, you think that Mrs. Patterson's life wasn't worth saving? Perhaps you think Sarah should have let her burn rather than risk damaging her appearance. I didn't know, Marcus stammered. No, you didn't, the general agreed. But you made assumptions anyway. You decided that someone with scars was less worthy of respect, less deserving of basic human kindness. The general's voice grew quieter, but somehow more powerful. Mrs. Patterson lived for 2 more years after that fire. 2 years with her grandchildren. 2 years of birthday parties and Christmas mornings. 2 years of life that she wouldn't have had without Sarah's courage. Marcus looked around the coffee shop. Every single person was staring at him with disgust and anger. He had never felt so small in his life. I think, General Morrison said, that you owe someone an apology. Marcus stood frozen in the middle of the coffee shop, surrounded by dozens of angry stares. His expensive suit suddenly felt like a costume, and his business success seemed meaningless compared to what he had just learned about Sarah. Where did she go? Marcus asked quietly, his earlier arrogance completely gone. General Morrison looked toward the door. She ran out about 10 minutes ago, probably halfway home by now, thanks to your cruelty. Marcus felt sick to his stomach. He had built his entire identity around being successful, important, better than other people, but standing here, learning about Sarah's heroism, he realized how shallow and empty his achievements really were. I need to find her, Marcus said. I need to apologize. Do you? The general asked. Or do you just want to make yourself feel better? The question hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Was he really concerned about Sarah? Or was he just trying to ease his own guilt? I don't know, Marcus admitted honestly. Both. Maybe. But I can't leave things like this. What I said was horrible. General Morrison studied Marcus's face for a long moment. Sarah works at the city library, but before you go charging over there, you need to understand something. This isn't about you anymore. This is about a woman who has already been through more pain than most people experience in a lifetime. Marcus nodded, feeling ashamed of how self-centered his thoughts had been even in this moment. Sarah doesn't owe you forgiveness, the general continued. If you go to her, it'd better be because you genuinely want to make amends, not because you want to feel like a good person again. How do you know so much about her? Marcus asked. General Morrison's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Patterson was my mother-in-law. Sarah saved the most important person in my daughter's life. My wife died young, and Mrs. Patterson helped raise our children. Without Sarah's courage, my grandchildren would have lost their great-grandmother much sooner. Marcus felt even worse. Not only had he mocked a hero, but he had done it in front of someone whose family had been directly affected by her bravery. I've been trying to find a way to properly thank Sarah for 3 years, the general continued. She refuses any recognition, won't accept money, doesn't want publicity, won't even let us throw her a dinner party. She just wants to be left alone. But why? Marcus asked. She's a hero. She should be celebrated. Because, the general said patiently, she doesn't see herself as a hero. She sees herself as someone who got burned. The physical scars healed as much as they're going to, but the emotional scars run much deeper. She spent 3 years avoiding social situations because of people exactly like you. The weight of what Marcus had done was crushing. He hadn't just been rude to a stranger. He had confirmed every fear and insecurity that Sarah had been battling for 3 years. Meanwhile, Sarah had made it back to her small apartment across town. She lived alone in a cozy one-bedroom place filled with books and plants. Usually, her home felt like a safe haven. But today, even her own space couldn't shut out Marcus's cruel words. She sat on her couch, still wearing her coat, and let the tears come. This was exactly why she avoided social situations. No matter how much progress she made in therapy, no matter how much her friends and family encouraged her, there would always be people like Marcus who saw her scars first and her humanity second. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Emma. How did the coffee shop adventure go? Did you meet any cute guys? Sarah stared at the message for a long time before typing back, not exactly. I think I'll stick to the library cafe from now on. Emma called immediately. What happened? You sound upset. Sarah found herself telling Emma the whole story, from bumping into Marcus to his cruel comments to fleeing the coffee shop in tears. Emma listened without interrupting, which Sarah appreciated. What an absolute jerk, Emma said when Sarah finished. I hope someone told him off. There was this older man who seemed upset about it, but I left before anything else happened. I just couldn't stay there with everyone staring at me. Sarah, you know that most people weren't staring at you with judgment, right? They were probably staring at him with disgust for being such a horrible person. Maybe, Sarah said, but she didn't really believe it. I just feel so stupid for thinking I could handle a normal social situation. Don't let one idiot undo 3 years of progress, Emma said firmly. You've come so far since the fire. Remember when you couldn't even go to the grocery store without a panic attack? Sarah did remember. The first year after the fire had been the darkest period of her life. She had barely left her apartment, convinced that everyone who saw her scars would react with disgust or pity. It had taken months of therapy and the patient support of friends like Emma to get her to the point where she could function normally at work. I know, Sarah said, but it still hurts, and it makes me wonder if I'm fooling myself thinking I can ever have a normal life.
You can have a normal life,
Emma insisted. You deserve a normal life. You deserve better than normal. You deserve an amazing life filled with people who see how incredible you are. After they hung up, Sarah tried to distract herself by reading, but she couldn't focus. Marcus's words kept echoing in her head. Maybe you should consider staying home if you can't handle being in public with scars like that. Back at the coffee shop, Marcus was still talking with General Morrison. The other customers had gradually returned to their conversations, but several still shot disapproving looks in Marcus's direction. I want to understand something, Marcus said. Why are you telling me all this? You could have just told me to shut up and leave Sarah alone. The general considered the question. Because I've seen good people do terrible things out of ignorance, and I've seen terrible people do good things when they finally understand the consequences of their actions. I'm trying to figure out which one you are. Marcus thought about that. I don't know if I'm a good person or not. I used to think I was. But good people don't say the things I said today. Good people make mistakes, the general said. The question is what they do afterward. So what should I do? That's not for me to decide. But I'll tell you this. If you do decide to seek out Sarah, you had better be prepared to listen more than you talk. And you had better be prepared for the possibility that she won't want anything to do with you, no matter how sorry you are. Marcus nodded. He understood that he had no right to expect forgiveness, but he also knew he couldn't live with himself if he didn't at least try to make amends. Can you tell me more about the fire? Marcus asked. I want to understand what she went through. General Morrison looked surprised by the request, but he seemed to approve of Marcus's desire to learn, rather than just apologize and move on. It was a Tuesday evening in March, the general began. Sarah had just gotten home from work when she saw the smoke. The fire department said later that the house had been burning for at least 20 minutes before anyone called it in. By the time Sarah arrived, the first floor was completely engulfed. Marcus listened intently as the general described that terrible night. Sarah hadn't hesitated when she saw Mrs. Patterson at the upstairs window. She hadn't waited for professional help or considered the danger to herself. She had simply acted. The firefighters said they had never seen anything like it, the general continued. Sarah crawled through a hallway that was literally on fire. The smoke was so thick she couldn't see her own hand in front of her face. She found Mrs. Patterson by following the sound of her coughing. Marcus tried to imagine having that kind of courage. He thought about his own life, all the times he had taken the safe path, avoided risks, looked out for himself first. He couldn't think of a single moment when he had put someone else's needs before his own safety. Getting Mrs. Patterson to the window took almost 10 minutes, the general continued. Sarah had to half carry, half drag her through the burning house. By the time they reached the window, Sarah's clothes were on fire, and her skin was already badly burned. But she didn't stop. Marcus said, beginning to understand the true scope of Sarah's heroism. No, she didn't stop. Even when the ladder truck arrived and the firefighters were ready to help, Mrs. Disman was given. Patterson. Down Sarah insisted on going last. She wanted to make sure Mrs. Patterson was safe before she worried about herself. Marcus felt smaller with every detail. Not only had he mocked a hero, but he had mocked someone whose courage and selflessness were so far beyond his own experience that he couldn't even fully comprehend it. That's when the roof collapsed, the general said quietly. Sarah was halfway down the ladder when a burning beam fell. She could have dropped to safety, but Mrs. Patterson was directly below her. So Sarah held on and took the full impact. The general paused, and Marcus could see the emotion in his eyes. The beam weighed over 200 pounds and was completely on fire. Sarah held it off Mrs. Patterson's body for almost 30 seconds before the firefighters could move it. 30 seconds doesn't sound like long, but with 200 pounds of burning wood crushing down on you, the general trailed off. Marcus was struggling not to cry. He had never heard of such selfless bravery, and the fact that he had mocked it made him feel like the worst person in the world. Mrs. Patterson had minor smoke inhalation and a small burn on her hand, the general continued. Sarah spent 2 months in the hospital and had to have multiple skin grafts. She nearly lost her left arm, and the scars on her neck are from where her jacket caught fire. And I made fun of her for them? Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes, you did, but now you know better. The question is what you're going to do with that knowledge. Marcus knew what he had to do. He had to find Sarah and apologize, not because it would make him feel better, but because she deserved to hear that not everyone would judge her for her scars. She deserved to know that at least one person who had wronged her was genuinely sorry and would never make the same mistake again. But first, he had to figure out how to become the kind of person worthy of giving such an apology. 3 days passed before Marcus worked up the courage to visit the city library. He had spent those days thinking about everything General Morrison had told him, and the more he thought about it, the more ashamed he became of the person he had been. Marcus had always believed that success in business made him a good person. He donated to charity for tax benefits, said please and thank you, and considered himself well-mannered. But he realized now that he had never really been tested. He had never faced a situation that required real courage or genuine selflessness. When Marcus finally walked into the library, he felt nervous in a way he hadn't experienced since high school. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by a deep uncertainty about whether he deserved Sarah's time, let alone her forgiveness. The main floor of the library was busy with people reading, studying, and browsing books. Marcus approached the information desk, where a middle-aged woman with glasses looked up at him expectantly. "I'm looking for Sarah Chen," he said quietly. "I need to speak with her about something important." The librarian's expression became guarded. "May I ask what this is regarding?" Marcus realized that Sarah's co-workers probably protected her from uncomfortable situations. "I'm someone who treated her very poorly a few days ago. I came to apologize." The woman studied Marcus for a long moment. "Wait here," she said finally. Sarah was in the back room, cataloging new books, when her colleague Janet approached her. "There's a man out front asking for you," Janet said carefully. "He says he treated you poorly and wants to apologize. He's well-dressed, blonde hair, looks like a businessman." Sarah's stomach dropped. "That's him, the one from the coffee shop." Janet's expression hardened. "Do you want me to tell him to leave?" Sarah's first instinct was to say yes. She didn't want to relive that humiliating morning or give Marcus another opportunity to hurt her, but something made her pause. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was the therapy sessions where she had been working on not letting fear control her decisions. "No," Sarah said slowly. "I'll talk to him."
But stay close, okay?
Janet nodded.
I'll be right at the desk if you need anything.
Sarah took a deep breath and walked to the front of the library. Marcus was standing near the information desk holding a small potted plant. When he saw her, his face immediately showed genuine remorse. "Sarah," he said softly, "thank you for agreeing to see me." Up close, Marcus looked different than he had in the coffee shop. He was still well-dressed, but the arrogance was completely gone. His eyes were red, as if he hadn't been sleeping well. "What do you want?" Sarah asked, keeping her voice steady. "I came to apologize," Marcus said. "What I said to you the other day was inexcusable. I was cruel and ignorant, and I'm deeply sorry." Sarah crossed her arms. "Okay. Is that all?" Marcus looked surprised by her directness. He had expected this conversation to be more emotional, but Sarah seemed calm and controlled. "I also came to tell you that I know now," Marcus continued, "about what you did during the fire. About Mrs. Patterson." Sarah's composure cracked slightly. "Who told you about that?" "General Morrison. Mrs. Patterson was his mother-in-law. He was in the coffee shop when I said those horrible things to you." Sarah closed her eyes. General Morrison had been trying to honor her for 3 years, and she had always declined his invitations and avoided his calls. The fact that he had witnessed her humiliation made it even worse. "So now you know I'm not just some accident victim," Sarah said. "Does that make you feel better about what you said?" The question caught Marcus off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, would your apology be as sincere if I was just someone who got burned in an accident? If I wasn't a hero, would you still feel the need to make amends?" Marcus thought about the question seriously. It was a fair point, and it made him examine his own motivations more closely. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "I'd like to think I would, but I honestly don't know. What I do know is that what I said was wrong, regardless of how you got your scars. No one deserves to be treated the way I treated you." Sarah appreciated his honesty, even if the answer wasn't what she had hoped for. "I brought you this," Marcus said, holding out the potted plant. It was a small succulent with thick, waxy leaves. "I know it doesn't make up for anything, but I wanted to give you something that represents growth and healing." Sarah looked at the plant but didn't take it. "Why does this matter to you so much? You don't know me. You could have just forgotten about what happened and moved on with your life." Marcus set the plant down on the information desk. "Because I realized that what I did to you is part of a bigger problem with who I am as a person. I've spent my whole life thinking I was successful and important, but I've never done anything that actually mattered. I've never helped anyone or made a real difference in the world." "And you think apologizing to me will fix that?" Sarah asked. "No," Marcus said. "I think apologizing to you is just the first step. I can't undo what I said, but I can try to become a better person going forward." Sarah studied his face, looking for signs of insincerity or self-interest. She had become good at reading people over the past 3 years, having learned to identify those who stared at her scars with pity versus those who stared with disgust. What does that mean exactly? She asked. Becoming a better person? Marcus had been thinking about this question for days. I don't know yet, but I know it means not judging people by their appearance. It means not assuming I know someone's story. It means thinking about how my words affect others before I speak. Those are nice words, Sarah said. But words are easy. Actions are harder. You're right, Marcus agreed. So I want to ask you something. And I want you to know that you can say no without any hard feelings. Sarah waited. General Morrison told me that you won't accept any recognition for what you did. No ceremonies, no awards, no publicity. But he also mentioned that the burn unit at the hospital could use support. Would you let me make a donation in your name? Not for recognition, but because it might help other people who are going through what you went through? Sarah was surprised by the suggestion. She had expected Marcus to ask for forgiveness or a chance to make things right between them personally. How much of a donation? She asked. Marcus named a figure that made Sarah's eyes widen. It was more money than she made in an entire year. I can afford it, Marcus said quietly. I've been saving money for things that don't really matter. This would actually matter. Sarah thought about the burn unit where she had spent 2 months recovering. She remembered the other patients, especially the children, and how difficult their journeys had been. The unit was always in need of better equipment and more comfortable accommodations for families. That's very generous, Sarah said. It's not generous, Marcus replied. It's necessary. I need to do something meaningful with the resources I have, and this seems like a good place to start. Sarah looked at Marcus more closely. His desire to help seemed genuine, but she was still wary of his motives. Why the burn unit specifically? She asked. Why not cancer research or children's charities or something more popular? Because I heard someone who survived a fire, Marcus said simply. I want to help other fire survivors in a way that honors what you went through. For the first time since their conversation began, Sarah felt some of her anger beginning to soften. This wasn't just about making himself feel better. Marcus was trying to turn his shame into something constructive. Okay, Sarah said, but I have conditions. Marcus nodded eagerly. Whatever you want. First, you don't get to use this for publicity or tax benefits beyond what's legally required. Second, you visit the burn unit and meet some of the patients before you make the donation. And third, this doesn't make us friends. This doesn't erase what you said to me. I understand, Marcus said, and I agree to all of those conditions. Sarah picked up the succulent from the information desk and examined it more closely. The leaves were a beautiful blue-green color, and tiny new growth was visible at the center. What kind of plant is this? She asked. It's called a jade plant, Marcus said. They're very resilient. They can survive in difficult conditions and still grow beautifully. Sarah looked at him, wondering if the symbolism was intentional. I thought it was appropriate, Marcus added quietly. Despite everything, Sarah found herself almost smiling. It is appropriate. Thank you. Marcus felt a small surge of hope. So you'll accept it? I'll accept the plant, Sarah said carefully. The rest we'll see. Over the next few weeks, Marcus kept his word. He visited the burn unit at the hospital and spent time talking with patients and their families. He learned about the long recovery process, the pain and frustration, and the emotional challenges that came with surviving severe burns. The experience changed him in ways he hadn't expected. He met children who faced each day with incredible bravery, adults who had to rebuild their entire lives, and families who demonstrated love and loyalty that humbled him completely. Marcus also learned about the practical needs of the unit, better pain management equipment, more comfortable family sleeping areas, and updated physical therapy facilities that could help patients regain mobility and function. When he finally made the donation, Marcus insisted that it be done quietly. No press releases, no naming rights, no public recognition. He simply wrote a check and asked that the money be used where it was needed most. General Morrison heard about the donation and called Marcus personally to thank him. I'm impressed, the general said. Most people who make large donations want everyone to know about it. This isn't about me, Marcus replied. It's about trying to make up for something I did wrong. And how is that going? The general asked. With Sarah, I mean. Marcus was quiet for a moment. She's polite when I see her. We've talked a few times since that day at the library, but she hasn't forgiven me, and I don't think she should. What I said was unforgivable. Maybe, the general said, but people are more resilient than you might think. Sarah especially. 3 months after their first conversation, Marcus was surprised to receive a text from Sarah. It was a photo of the jade plant, which had grown noticeably and sprouted several new leaves. "It's thriving," the message read. "Thank you again." Marcus stared at the photo for a long time. The plant did look healthy and strong, just like Sarah herself. He realized that he had never responded to her properly in that coffee shop, not as someone who deserved respect and kindness, but as someone who had shown extraordinary courage and deserved to be honored. He typed back, "I'm glad it's doing well. How are you doing?" Sarah's response came quickly. "Better. I've been going to new places lately. Coffee shops, restaurants, social events. It's still hard sometimes, but I'm not letting fear make my decisions anymore." Marcus smiled as he read the message. "That's wonderful. You deserve to go anywhere you want and be treated with respect." There was a long pause before Sarah's next message arrived. "I've been thinking about what you said about becoming a better person. I think maybe you're already on your way." Marcus felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with being forgiven and everything to do with earning a small measure of respect from someone he admired. "I'm trying," he typed back. "I have a long way to go, but I'm trying." Sarah's final message that day was simple but meaningful. "We all have scars, Marcus. Some are just more visible than others. The important thing is what we do with them." Marcus saved that message and read it whenever he felt tempted to judge someone based on appearances. It reminded him that everyone had a story, everyone had struggles, and everyone deserved to be treated with dignity and kindness. He never did become close friends with Sarah, but they maintained a respectful acquaintance. Sometimes they would run into each other at the library or around town, and they would chat briefly about books or current events. Sarah would update him occasionally on the jade plant's progress, and Marcus would tell her about his volunteer work at the burn unit. It wasn't a friendship built on shared interests or natural compatibility. It was something more valuable, a connection built on growth, accountability, and the recognition that people could change if they were willing to do the hard work of examining themselves honestly. Marcus did become a better person, though it took years of conscious effort. He learned to listen more than he spoke, to consider the impact of his words before saying them, and to see the humanity in everyone he met. He never forgot the lessons Sarah had taught him about courage, both in facing physical danger and in facing the daily challenge of living with visible differences in a world that often valued appearance over character. And Sarah continued to thrive, like her jade plant, growing stronger and more confident with each passing season. She never forgot Marcus's cruelty, but she also never forgot his genuine effort to make amends. Most importantly, she never again let someone else's ignorance or prejudice determine her worth or limit her life. Both of them learned that healing, whether from physical scars or from the emotional wounds we inflict on each other, is possible when people are willing to do the difficult work of change. And sometimes the most profound growth comes not from our victories, but from our failures and how we choose to respond to them.